Welcome back. In the last episode, we spoke about emotional regulation and staying steady under pressure. Today, I want to take the conversation somewhere slightly more uncomfortable, because this is where real leadership growth happens. We're going to talk about self-sabotage, accountability, and ownership. Now, self-sabotage is not always dramatic. It does not look like failure. In fact, it often hides inside high performance. It hides in overworking. It hides in control. It hides in perfectionism. It hides in avoiding certain conversations while excelling at everything else. And because it hides so well, most capable leaders do not recognize it in themselves. Now, I've worked with professionals who are intelligent, strategic, driven, and genuinely committed to their teams. From the outside, nothing looks broken. Targets are met, projects move forward, meetings are efficient. Yet underneath that efficiency, there is often a subtle pattern playing out. Sometimes it is the habit of saying yes to everything and then quietly resenting the workload. Sometimes it is stepping in too quickly when a team member struggles, rather than allowing them to learn. Sometimes it is avoiding a difficult conversation because it feels easier to manage around the issue than address it directly. None of this feels like sabotage in the moment. It feels responsible, it feels proactive, it feels committed. But over time, it erodes clarity and confidence. Self-sabotage in leadership often shows up as misalignment between intention and behavior. You intend to empower your team, yet you double-check their work excessively. You intend to build trust, yet you hesitate to delegate fully. You intend to create openness, yet you avoid conversations that might create short-term discomfort. This is not about criticism, it is about awareness. Because the moment you recognize a pattern, you regain control over it. One of the most powerful shifts in self-leadership is moving from blame to ownership. Not in a dramatic way, self-punishing way, but in a steady, mature way. It is easy to blame external pressure. It is easy to blame deadlines, market conditions, organizational change, or the behavior of others. And to be clear, those factors are real. They affect us. But what often gets overlooked is our response to them. Accountability in leadership is less about admitting mistakes publicly and more about privately asking yourself honest questions. Where am I contributing to the tension I'm experiencing? Where might my communication be creating confusion rather than clarity? Am I reacting to pressure or leading through it? These questions are not comfortable, but they are liberating. Because once you own your response, you stop feeling powerless. I've seen leaders transform simply by shifting their language. Instead of saying, "My team is not proactive," they ask, "Have I created an environment where they feel safe to take initiatives?" Instead of saying, "There is too much pressure," they ask, "How am I managing the pressure I am under?" Taking ownership shifts energy. It moves you from frustration to influence. There is another subtle form of self-sabotage that high achievers fall into, and that is tying identity too tightly to performance. When results become the only measure of worth, every setback feels personal, every challenge feels like a threat. In that space, accountability becomes defensive rather than reflective. But strong leadership separates identity from outcome. You can examine your behavior without attacking your self-worth. You can adjust your approach without collapsing your confidence. This is maturity in leadership. It is also why accountability must be paired with self-awareness and self-respect. Ownership is not about self-blame. It is about clarity. It is about recognizing where you have agency. And agency is powerful. When you take ownership of your tone, your timing, your energy, and your decisions, you stop waiting for circumstances to improve before you feel steady. You create steadiness. I remember a phase in my own leadership journey where I felt frustrated with recurring issues in my team. I initially attributed it to skill gaps and external workload pressures. Over time, I realized that my own communication style was contributing to the pattern. I was stepping in too quickly, I was solving before listening fully. My intention was efficiency, however, the impact was dependency. It was not a dramatic realization, it was uncomfortable, but it was clarifying. And once I owned that, the dynamic shifted. This is what self-leadership demands: the willingness to hold up a mirror without turning away too quickly. If you're watching this and thinking, I do not sabotage myself, I would gently invite you to look closer. It is rarely obvious. It is often subtle. It might be the habit of postponing strategic thinking because operational tasks feel urgent. It might be the reluctance to ask for support because you believe strong leaders should handle everything alone. The question is not whether patterns exist. The question is whether we are willing to examine them. And this examination does not need to be dramatic. It can begin with simple reflection. At the end of this week, consider asking yourself, where did I avoid something that needed to be addressed? Where did I overcompensate? Where did I react from habit instead of intention? The goal is not perfection, the goal is awareness. Because leadership growth is rarely about learning something entirely new. More often, it is about seeing something familiar with greater honesty. In the next episode, we will shift to something that supports all of this work, and that is self-care and sustainable leadership energy. Because accountability without sustainability leads to burnout, and burnout does not strengthen leadership, it weakens it. For now, I would encourage you to reflect on one question. Where might I be getting in my own way? Not as criticism, as curiosity. Because self-leadership begins the moment excuses end and ownership begins. And that is where real strength develops. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, stay inspirited. Bye.